Hello there, and welcome to a Dude, Where's My Coordinator edition of the Buckeye Fever Cop podcast. That's right, Dude, Where's My Coordinator? There is no way to hook Gen Z and these podcast demos like launching the show with a 2000 obscure movie reference. Dude, Where's My Coordinator? That's Ryan Day's movie right now. Because last week, Chip Kelly left, or last week, Jim Knowles left. This week, it's Chip Kelly, now the new offensive coordinator of the Raiders, to the tune of $6 million a year. I'll say this about Ryan Day. He will make you money. Invest in Ryan Day, not crypto, not the S&P. Go work for Ryan Day, and he will almost double your paycheck in 12 months. So we're going to break this down. Chip Kelly leaves to now be the offensive coordinator at the Raiders under Pete Carroll, which is an interesting combination. But $6 million a year. He's now the highest paid NFL coordinator. Jim Knowles left to go to Penn State. Now he's making 3.1. He's the highest paid collegiate coordinator. So in 12 months, Ryan Day made his two coordinators the richest in their profession at what they do. You're welcome. Doesn't surprise me. Chip Kelly always wanted to go back to the NFL. It was an odd move when he left UCLA as a head coach to come to Columbus to begin with. So it only makes sense that he wanted something more. I don't think there's any animosity. There's no drama behind the scenes. There's nothing to poke at here. This was Ryan Day's mentor, came and did a favor, led his offense to a national championship, and now he moved on. And Ryan Day even spoke about it on a podcast where he basically said, we're going to have a beer one day and talk about how great it was to have that 1 year together. So good for Chip. No animosity, I think, within the locker room or from Ryan whatsoever. He saw $6 million, a chance to go to the NFL, and it's a done deal. Jim Knowles, 3.1 now at Penn State. I'll say this, that if you watch like The Last Dance, the documentary on the Chicago Bulls that came out during COVID, you kind of see how hard it is to win these things over and over again. Because once you win a championship, there's a natural let off from the actual players and coaches, because once you win a championship, it is very natural to take the foot off the gas because it takes so much to get there. It's hard to keep that same energy and motivation. There's a little bit of that. It's also hard to keep people together because once you check a championship off your list, other things might be more important to you. It might be where you live, how much money you make, a different work situation, or just the feeling of wanting a new mountain to climb. You know, and as I watched the Last Dance documentary with the Bulls, they all said in 1998, they kind of understood this was probably the last time it's ever going to be like this. And now we know that the 2024 Ohio State Buckeyes were a moment in time. It'll never be replicated, but it was the right guys in the right place at the right time to win the national championship. But when you see it, it makes sense now why only two teams have gone back-to-back in the last 30 years, Georgia and Alabama. It's not easy to repeat. I believe back in 94, 95, or technically 95, 96, Nebraska did it as well. But it's not easy. It is not easy to repeat. So Ryan Day now has a major challenge on his hands. Does he promote from within? I know a lot of people are calling for Brian Hartline. He had a chance to promote him once, and he brought in Chip Kelly. And before he brought in Chip Kelly, it was Bill O'Brien. Remember, he was the OC for like a week and a half. I don't know if you're on vacation that week, you might have missed it. But Bill O'Brien was the OC at Ohio State for a cup of coffee. And then he left before even really doing anything. So Hartline's had a chance to be promoted before. Ryan Day chose not to do that. I'm not sure exactly why. He is absolutely the internal candidate now that a lot of people are calling for. And Ryan Day has a difficult decision to make. He knows Brian Hartline better than any of us do. Does he think Brian Hartline is one of the best recruiters and developers in college football, but not necessarily a play-calling kind of guy? We're going to find out. And this is what's hard about being the head coach of a college football team. Some of these guys, I'm assuming most of them, want internal promotions. Maybe some guys are actually content being a position coach. But more often than not, these are alpha personalities who want to progress. More responsibility, more money, more spotlight. And Brian Hartline is in his upper 30s. So if he's going to start making a move that's more than what he is now, the clock is starting to tick. You know, Ryan Day was about that age when he took over Ohio State as head coach. So Brian Hartline is of the age where he probably thinks it's time for more responsibility. And if Ryan Day doesn't promote Brian Hartline, does that cause tension behind the scenes? So that's really the big thing to look for now is this Brian Hartline's time? Is he ready? Does Ryan Day think he's ready? If he goes from the outside, what does that mean for the relationship? Very interesting dynamic here to watch over the next 4 to 6 weeks as we get ready for spring football. By the way, spring football will be different this year. Normally, Ohio State would practice, go on spring break, and come back. They're going to push it all back and start right after Ohio State spring break. So it's going to be a later spring for the Buckeyes before they get going again to the spring game. I'll end on this. It's a short podcast this week. It is the offseason. It is realistic for Ohio State to take a step back next year. And some of you just shut off the podcast because you don't want to hear it. But they have probably 15 players. Potentially, Ohio State could tie the record for most draft picks ever. They probably have a dozen minimum, maybe 15 players who could get drafted. You lose all those players, you're going to have a new OC, a new DC, a new quarterback. You lost both your running backs. There's a lot of turnover, especially on defense, when you have a new coach and all of that experience is gone. So I think it's realistic that Ohio State could take a step back next year. Now, they are still Ohio State, so a step back isn't going to look like 8-4. I'm just saying it is going to be really hard, and I think maybe even unrealistic for this team to repeat as national champs next year. I don't think 11-1 or 10-2 is necessarily a bad thing. If you throw in first year for Julian Sayin and new coaches on each side of the ball and a brand new defense, it's a lot of turnover. Ryan Day won a national championship. Good for him. And now this is going to be a very difficult coaching job. This year was difficult from a mental standpoint, getting the team to move past Michigan and win those 4 straight games. I think this year he has a personnel problem. Now, there are 120 other coaches in college football who'd love to have the kind of personnel problem Ryan Day has. He still has a supreme level of talent. But it's going to be a very difficult and stressful spring to find out how to replace all these positions, who are going to be your new starters, who are the guys you trust, who are the coaches to be the right guys to develop that talent. I'm just saying that I won't be shocked next year if this Buckeye team goes 10-2 or 11-1 and doesn't win at all. I think this year we were very justified to have the lofty expectations we had. I think next year it is realistic to expect this Ohio State team to have a little bit of growing pains, especially when you welcome Texas, who might be the best team in college football, to the shoe in week 1. They don't get to warm up with Akron. They don't get to warm up with Western Michigan. It's here comes Arch Manning and the Longhorns in week 1. Interesting to watch. We're going to keep an eye on this coordinator battle at both offense and defense over the next week. Like I said, abbreviated edition of the Buckeye Fever podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. If you're doing a cardio session, you're welcome. Step off the treadmill. This was an easy one. You're welcome. We made it short. We're going to do another one next week. We'll see you then.